contact with each other about whose turn it was to preach. And he said he wasn't feeling well, was not feeling good at all. And I think he's a little better this morning. But he said, if I'm inspired, I should just go ahead and preach. And I said, well, I preached the last 2 Sundays, so my inspiration reached over to ask one of the other men to preach. So I asked Jeff if he would grace us with a message, and he graciously said he would. So I guess he'll bring us the message this morning. Jeff.
All right. This morning I wasn't sure what to have last night when Dad called me. And oftentimes when I'm running down the road, I think of all these things that questions I have or something that I'd love to have elaborated on. And I need to start writing those down. But then I was trying to figure out what in the world I'm going to talk about. And I thought maybe it would be a good idea to talk about something that maybe church leaders struggle with talking about. And so it's going to be about honoring, respecting, and giving our church leaders gratitude. And I think I've only ever heard, or I've only ever sat in one message that I can remember that taught about how to honor and respect church leaders that I can remember. And it's got to be awfully hard for a church leader to speak on that subject, because you're basically saying, honor me and respect me, is what I imagine it would feel like for a leader to speak on that. Although I know that's not accurate for a biblical leader. That's probably what Satan tries to put in your mind. So I thought maybe it'd be a good idea if me not being a church leader would speak on how to honor, how to respect, and how to give gratitude to our church leaders. I think when you dig into it, the Bible very clearly states, and I'll start with this and I'll also end with this, but in the middle part of what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to maybe get into the nuts and bolts of it. But I think obviously Christ needs to be kept as the ultimate focus, and leaders are just there to give to us people what we need to hear. But as we honor and respect leaders, we have to understand that we're honoring, respecting them, and giving them gratitude. But our ultimate focus should be on God and, what Jesus came to do for us. To get into the nuts and bolts of it a little bit, what does honor and respect? What is honor and respect? I think every one of us here grew up in a really conservative setting where leaders typically tell you honor. If they don't tell you, they make it known that you should honor and respect them. But it comes across in a way where honor and respect is basically obedience. Do what I say. That's pretty much it. In conservative circles, which also plays into a larger picture of what does Christian walk look like. I think it's a mix of faith and works. But in conservative circles, oftentimes the concentration is on works. And as a works-based leader, you have to obey what I say, because I'm going to show you how we're going to make our works prove that we should be a Christian. So I think it oftentimes, in my mind growing up, I felt like honor and respect was to listen to what a church leader said, regardless. If he said wear suspenders, you wore suspenders. And that's what honor and respect looked like for a 12-year-old me or a 15-year-old me was, if you can't wear black shoes to church because, the preacher said you can't. And I thought honor and respecting a preacher or a leader was that, not doing things that he said or doing things that he said. I have really dug into honor and respect in the last couple of years, the last 2 years, trying to figure out what does honor and respect look like. So we're going to dig into what honor and respect looks like, and then we're going to talk about how to do it with our leaders. Honor and respect are always given. They're always given. They're never forced. Honor and respect are not demanded. Honor and respect is not obeying in that strict sense only. I think obedience comes from honor and respecting, but honor and respect in and of itself is not just obeying. Honor and respect is not about being polite. What does honor and respect look like? These are my thoughts on what honor and respect looks like. Hopefully I'm not off target too much. If I am, hopefully somebody will tell me. But I believe that honor and respect looks like recognition and value. Recognizing somebody and valuing them. When you recognize and value somebody, you see their worth and what they bring to the table, no matter their background or their status. You're really going to dig into that person, and you're going to see what their value is in a specific situation. It's also about seeing and acknowledging their contributions. Whatever it is that they bring to the table, they're contributing something. Everybody is a little bit different. So, I mean, I know even in our family, like Dad's family, now that in-laws are coming into the family, there's just so much diversity, and there's now I have 2 sister-in-laws and then a wife. So for Mom and Dad, they have 3 daughter-in-laws, and they're all so crazy different. It's wild, but it's cool because they come from their own different background, and they have their own way of doing things, and it's pretty neat how that all works in the family. So see that and acknowledge that about a person. If that's in church, see that and acknowledge that. And again, this is what I feel like honor and respect looks like. Also, seeing, maybe more so in a leader, but seeing what impact they have on people's lives. How do you, I think the whole thing of judge not so you're not judged thing is probably taken out of context. I mean, how else do we get to critique somebody, or how else can I be critiqued if I just throw back in your face, well, don't judge me? Well, I mean, the Bible is all pretty much built on that premise. Jesus would guide and lead, and he would see things in people. So, what type of impact do you have on somebody's lives or a group of people's lives? Take that into context about how you honor and respect a leader. I also think it's about seeing the achievements of a leader and the positive difference that they've made to change things or make things better. You take a leader that leads a church or a business or a family or whatever it is, what are their achievements? What milestones have they hit? What's their building blocks? How have they made a positive difference in the people that they lead, and how have they made things better? How does a church leader in our church, how did they make things better? How have they made a positive difference? Those are some ways that I think, these are attributes of honor and respecting. Honor and respecting is about treating somebody with respect and dignity. To dignify somebody, you kind of place them on a pedestal a little bit. Like Dad always told Amy growing up, like, handle yourself with grace and dignity. Don't just be all over the board and don't be I think most of us know German, like, don't be a flutsch. So, you know, and to treat somebody with dignity is to set them apart, and to treat them with class, basically, is the way I would, you know. Don't treat them like mud. Don't treat them like they're nothing. Treat them with class. I also think that honoring and respecting a person is about seeing and appreciating their uniqueness. Everybody is unique. I'm unique. I'm a little weird in some of my ways, and so are you. Each person is unique in their own little way, and a little weird in their own little way. That's what makes the world go around, and you got to lean into that, especially in your leaders, your church leaders. Your church leaders are going to be a little bit weird, a little bit odd and unique in their own little way. Lean into it. That's cool. That's good. That's you know, if they were all the same, if they were all a cookie cutter, it wouldn't be no fun. You know, they see things that we don't see. Value them as a person. To honor and respect a person is to value them and their individuality. We buy some registered cattle, and their pedigrees, you look at their pedigrees, and they're a unique individual. We like this about a certain cow family or a certain bull family because they're unique with these traits. Maybe they're deep-bodied, maybe they have good length to them, maybe they milk good, maybe I don't know, the list goes on, but whatever it is that you like in your herd. I mean, in our herd, we like cattle with good feet. They milk good. We like big cows. Some people like small cows. We like big cows because we feel like they can take care of themselves a little bit better. You know, they can go a day without eating hay if we can't get to them. On a cold winter day, a small cow can't. You know, just small things like that. What makes our herd unique? What you know, and to value that about your leaders. Whatever it is that makes them as an individual click, or whatever's unique about them, lean into them with that. Honor and respecting a leader is also about allowing them the freedom to make their own choices and appreciating their unique or diverse background. In some churches you see where they don't allow a leader the freedom to make choices. And again, I think this comes back to coming from conservative circles where, you know, you do what the leader says. Well, then there's this other ditch where we're not going to do what the leader says. We want to be in charge, and so I've heard Dad talk about this because I don't keep up with church drama a whole lot, but you know, Dad's connected to all his preacher buddies, and they set up these I don't even know what you call them anymore. They set up this group of men to lead the church because and then they tell the group of men what to do. Because they don't want, what do you call that? The elders, there you go. They set up these elders in church, and I have a cousin right now that's supposed to be the leader in his church. He was ordained as a leader in his church, but they don't really do what he says because they also put appointed elders in the church, and then they tell the elders what to do. And it gets frustrating as a leader because you try to say something, you spin your wheels in the mud because you have no freedom to make any sort of a choice. And that's what a leader is. I mean, a leader is set apart to lead and make choices and to decide. Otherwise, why don't we just make that person a leader? That is what a leader is. That the leaders that we have in this church, they're here to make choices for us, and we should give them the freedom to make choices for us. And we should lean into that and be happy about it. Not try to run the church from the back row. No pun intended, Danny. But, you know, we're supposed to lean into that and also appreciate their unique or diverse background. It doesn't have to be a middle-aged white woman making the decisions. Sometimes a young Latina can make the decisions. But whatever the case is in a leadership role, it doesn't always. I heard Brenda is having the women's whatever you want to call it, women's meeting this week, where they get together and have tea time or whatever it is. It doesn't always have to be, that's leadership. And it doesn't always have to be a middle-aged white woman. Sometimes it can be a little Spitfire Latina. But things like that lean into, uniqueness and different backgrounds. I've learned a lot traveling down to Central America and the different types of leadership. Down Central America, one thing they struggle with over and over and over again is white people from the States trying to come down there and enforce their will on the people of Central America. Things are done differently in Central America. Let the Central Americans do things how the Central Americans do things. We'll do things how we do things up here. But to embrace that. Another thing regarding honoring and respecting, and regarding how to honor and respect is in your interactions and communications. We have tons of interactions and communications with our leaders. We should. If we don't, it's our own fault. And it's important. And the part of this too is I've heard 2 leaders in the last month of our church say that they want to take more time to communicate with people and sit down with coffee with them. Well, why should we, as lay members of the church, why should we wait on those people to come to us? Why don't we make the first move? We heard, and I'm literally talking to myself here, but I thought about this when I was, like David said the other Sunday, he said it's good for us to think about these things and write them down, because all of a sudden it hits different. But I was thinking about it, if a leader wants to make an effort in a specific area, why are we waiting on him to make the effort? We know what he wants to do. Why don't I set up the coffee date? Why don't I make it happen? They're busy people too. So I think in our interactions and communications, go above and beyond to help a leader and support him. To honor and respect a leader is to treat them with independence. Don't depend on them for everything, and don't make them depend on you for everything. Treat them with independence. Let them have freedom. Let them do what makes them, whatever it is that they're good at. Let them do that. Don't hold them back. Don't whine and complain about something. Also, in honor and respecting somebody through our communication interactions, be polite. I don't think it's proper to yell. I don't think it's proper to be polite, be courteous. Like just simple human relationship skills, like listen attentively and actively when they're talking to you. If they come to you with something, maybe a concern or something, listen actively and attentively. Lean forward when they talk to you. Don't sit with your arms crossed and lean back in your chair. That's not honoring and respecting your leaders. Look them in the eyes and lean forward and act attentive. Avoid disruptions and interruptions. And these are all things where honoring and respecting a leader, I think, comes into play. When David comes and talks to me, I shouldn't sit over in the corner with my head in my phone, with my arms crossed. Arms crossed like this is typically a sign that somebody is closed. Not always. Sometimes it's just for comfortability. Typically, if somebody sits like this, they're not open to what you have to say. Open your arms, be open, listen, tune in, avoid distractions. If your phone rings, shut it off. If it's your wife, tell her, is it an emergency? I'm in a meeting. Be attentive and listen to what they have to say, look them in their eyes, and get into their shoes, understand their perspectives, and from which direction they're coming from. They typically have some sort of a direction that, if they're good, godly the leaders in our church, John, Al, and David, all have good perspectives, and they all have a good direction from where they're coming from if they approach you with something. And so if they approach you with something, they have some direction that they're coming from. It's probably a prior occasion, a previous occasion, something that happened a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, some scenario that they see, and they see it playing out right in front of their eyes, and they want to warn you from that or guide you away from that. That's literally what leaders are for. Godly leaders are there to lead and guide and direct. Like, hey, watch out for this. Be careful there. Steer it back over here. Steer it over there. Keep it in the middle of the road. So they're coming to you with a history of something typically, especially older, like 35 and on up men, like leaders in the church, because they've lived just a little bit of life and they've been through at least one happening of something, typically, if not two or more. So to lean into that and to actively be attentive and to embrace what they're trying to say and put yourself in their shoes, that is huge for a leader, I think. Just the fact that you are actively trying to pay attention to what they're saying. Another thing with honoring and respecting a leader, have empathy and compassion. Understand and acknowledge their feelings and their experiences. Again, like I said, if they're saying something, they're coming from something. They're not just coming to you out of the blue and saying something just for the fun of it because they're some dictator. Maybe that's our experience from past experiences, but that's not the case in this church. I know so. So understand them and acknowledge if they feel a certain way, at least acknowledge it. You don't have to agree, but acknowledge their feelings and their experiences. Whatever experience it was that they went through and they think you're about to go through that, acknowledge that experience. Maybe ask some questions. There's no harm in asking some questions. Be sensitive to what they feel. Don't just be hard and cold and distant. Be sensitive. Have a warm heart when they're talking. Try to understand. I think Ruben does a phenomenal job of that when just with anything. It always seems like he has a sensitive heart about something or what. He's not. When you look at Ruben, you don't look at him as a cold-hearted, doesn't care type of person. So I think he's a good example in something like that, being sensitive to what they feel. Show kindness to a leader. Honoring and respecting a leader. How do you do it? Again, this is how we honor and respect a leader, is we show kindness. In our interactions with them, like, we talked about, leaning forward, not crossing our arms. When they're telling us something and it's hard for them to say it, they might start crying. Get them a tissue. Like simple things like that. That shows that you're alert and aware of what they're saying and that you care. And you're going to go get them a tissue. Even if you don't really care you don't maybe really care about their specific experience that led to that, get them a tissue because that's hard for them. you're being sensitive to them and what they're seeing. Or maybe they start laughing, you know. It doesn't hurt to give it a giggle, you know. It shows that you're picking up what they're laying down. To honor and respect a leader, I believe, is to be trustworthy. Hold your promises. When you're talking to somebody, hold your promises. Don't say one thing and do another. Just don't say it at all then. You know, if they admonish you and you say, yeah, I'll do that, and then you go out and you don't do it, well, then just don't say it. That's not being trustworthy, and I think that literally plays right into honoring and respecting a person. When they tell you something in secrecy, keep their secret. Some of the best leaders, some of the best church leaders in today's churches that I can relate with the most were some of the worst people growing up. And I can relate with them and they help me. So hold their secrets. I believe that God put them in that position to help people like me or young kids or whatever the case is. So hold their secrets. You don't have to go blab what they did when they were 17 years old. What's that going to do? What's that going to help? They are telling you that in secrecy, telling you their experiences and how they got to this point and how they overcame that. So hold their secrets. There's a reason they're telling you those secrets. Not that it can't be out in the open necessarily. Some things are just better kept private. Also, be reliable. Again, like I said, when you say you'll do something, do it. You know, when they tell you a life experience that they had when they were 22 years old, and they're trying to show you something or help you with something, and you say, yeah, when they say, I don't really want this to get out or anything, but this is one thing that I struggled with, and this is how I overcame it, then be reliable. Don't go exploit that about them. Have some integrity in that situation. Don't hang out all their dirty laundry. We all have dirty laundry. I have dirty laundry and you have dirty laundry. Don't hang it out. It doesn't need to be seen by everybody. How do we honor and respect leaders with action and behavior? Express gratitude. Wow. Express gratitude, I'll whiz through here. Openly and sincerely thank them for their kindness, support, or contribution in a certain situation or aspect. Support their growth and well-being. One thing that we have to understand is these are humans leading us. They're not robots, and we don't want robots leading us. They're humans, so they're our leaders in this church. They're gonna fail. They're gonna make mistakes. They are wrong occasionally. So, and that's what we want. That's who we want leading us. We don't want some robot, and that's typically what you get with conservative circles is do what I say, not what I do. So, encourage them, and it's okay to admonish them where they fail and come short. Again, we're keeping Christ the center focus. Accountability is a good thing. We're keeping Christ the center focus. It's not this thought of not being able to hold a leader accountable. It comes from a dictator role of conservative churches that we've went to, and not one of our leaders in this church, they all want to be held accountable. Express your gratitude and support their growth as a Christian themselves. Support them in their endeavors or goals or aspirations, whatever that is. Each pastor or leader has a different personal goal, and support them in that. If one of the pastors wants to be a missionary, ask you how you can help. If one of the pastors wants to be an evangelist, ask how you can help. if somebody wants to be more connected and buckle down with relationships within the church, like I said earlier, don't you set the meeting. Don't wait on them to set the meeting. You go do it. Another thing is protect and uphold their reputation. Like I said earlier, when they tell you something that happened in the past or whatever, don't bring it up. If something is in the middle of happening, protect their reputation, just like you would want your reputation to be upheld. Maybe they made a mistake. Maybe they did fail. But protect their overall reputation. It's okay to say, yeah, that guy failed in that area, or, whatever. Don't gossip. Defend them. When the criticism is unfair, defend them. Acknowledge that maybe they didn't make the best choice in that area or whatever, but remind whoever is gossiping or whoever is talking or whoever is talking to you about it, remind them that, how would you feel if the shoe was on the other foot? Don't damage a reputation just for the fun of damaging a reputation. And us lay members in the church, it's our response. I know a story of here a while ago, when one of the pastors was under attack, another pastor heard somebody in the local diner just going off about this. He stood up and he said, whoa, like, time out here, you're gossiping, and he upheld that man's reputation and his character, and he didn't get into the this, that, and the other things about it, but he just simply upheld the core character of that pastor. Give credit where credit is due, and don't hold back. If a pastor, needs some credit, even if you disagree with 75% of the things he does, if he's good in 25% of the areas of leading a church or pastoring, give him credit for that 25%. You don't have to lie. You don't have to tell him you're thankful he's good in this other area when he's not. But just simply tell him thank you for something that he's good at. Even if the only thing that he's good at is taking out the trash. Thanks for taking out the trash, or, whatever it is. Celebrate and recognize their achievements and acknowledge their successes publicly. All these things I do such a terrible job at, and we need to do a better job of it, is to acknowledge them and recognize them for the things they do. It's such a thankless job. I grew up a preacher's kid, and nobody ever said thank you. And here I am, grown up and have a wife, and now I'm the guy that doesn't say thank you. Your mindset and your intent of honoring and respecting an individual or a leader. Genuinely care because you see their good points. You literally have to get to a place where you make it right with God, and you get a warm heart, and then genuinely care about that person. Wish that leader well with a warm and gracious heart. Remember that, you could be that leader and you would be in tough spots too, and so maybe extend a little bit of grace here and there. Put your ego to the side. Focus on them and their needs and what sets them up for success. Like in volleyball, you're a setter. You don't have to be the spiker. Be a setter. Set them up and give them a good set. It's not all about you. It's not all about my ego and what I think and what I want. Make it about them and set our leaders up for success. And also, we need to be humble enough to realize that they have a position above us in leadership, and we should demonstrate our appreciation to them for their commitment. It is a commitment, and it's a hard commitment. I know so because I lived with a preacher ever since I was 12. So, basically, in essence, what I believe honoring and respecting a leader, especially a church leader, is honor is actively demonstrating respect, appreciation, and value for who they are and what they represent through thoughts, words, and actions. And I've got some verses to back all that up, but I need to close. But that's kind of my thoughts on how we should honor and respect leaders. I have got some work cut out for myself, and hopefully some of you other lay members, hopefully it spurred us and we can maybe give. One other thing I would say is the Bible says to double honor a good leader. And so, if a leader, I think that means to obviously honor them, respect them, but then also if they're struggling in a certain area, whatever it is, financially, or if it's, I know for sure financially, if they're struggling, which I don't think any of our leaders in this church struggle financially, but to help them in that area, and I think that's what double honor means. Maybe they have something going on, maybe they're an evangelist and they have trouble being at home with their family. Take time to maybe make them a meal or something. I think that's where giving the double honor comes into play, is to do all these things but then actually take action as well. So I don't know, hopefully we learned something. Hopefully I can get back on track with giving our leaders honor, respect, and to do it with gratitude. Thanks for listening. You want to close, Pops?